Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our session on leveraging cybersecurity to mitigate foreign influence risks. My name is Jordan Bendix, and I am a manager at Optiv Security. First of all, thank you, Dr. Kevin Gamache, for inviting us to the Academic Security and Counter Exploitation Program's annual seminar. I have the pleasure of being here with Mr. Jim Turgel, a vice president at Optiv Security, who is responsible for board relations. Mr. Turgel joined Optiv after spending 3 years in the cyber risk practice at Deloitte, and after retiring from a distinguished 22-year career with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. During his FBI career, Jim served as a special agent, attorney, and pilot in numerous FBI field offices, and 2 years as the Deputy General Counsel for Domestic Terrorism Affairs. His cyber experience began in 2003, working cyber investigations, and includes designing a cybercrime task force and computer forensic laboratory in the Cincinnati field office. Served in executive roles as the special agent in charge of the Phoenix, Arizona office, and senior executive C-suite roles as the assistant director, chief human resources capital officer, and culminated his career as the executive assistant director of global information technology and the FBI's chief information officer. Jim, thanks for being with us today. Let's get started.
Thanks, Jordan.
Well, sure. Well, Jim, to get started, can you tell us a little bit about your role at Optiv?
No, thank you for that very nice introduction. So my role at Optiv is really to pull together the vast amount of experience that I have in a number of different areas, right? As you pointed out, I'm an individual who's sat in a number of different C-suite roles, and that allows me to, both having been an investigator, having been a cyber expert, actually doing these cases, running Chinese, North Korean, and Russian cyber cases throughout my career, actually taking that investigative experience and all of those details, kind of putting that together with my executive experience in roles with the FBI, and then really taking that to the next level with our clients at Optiv, to be able to sit with that C-suite, no matter who it is, from the CEO on down to the organization, and specifically the board, in allowing us to have those conversations that are about technical issues, but it's really about educating the board, allowing the board and empowering the board to ask the right questions of their CISO and their CIO, and to understand the value proposition of technology.
Thank you, Jim. For this session, we will organize the discussion into 3 parts. We will discuss how foreign threats have influenced our state of cybersecurity in the past, how they continue to do so today, and how we will anticipate them to do so in the future, and what we as security professionals can be doing to prepare and mitigate the growing foreign risks. So let's start with the first part, about how foreign threats have influenced our current state of cybersecurity. And so, Jim, the first question I have is, how would we define a foreign influence risk in today's society?
Well, foreign influence operations, in my eyes, include covert actions by foreign governments to influence both U.S. political sentiment, public discourse, and this, we've seen this actually goes back as a way of governments interacting with each other, as long as there have been governments. But it's the interconnectedness of the modern world, right? It's the cyber aspect, it's the internet aspect, and the anonymity of the internet really has changed the nature of how cyber and foreign influence threats, and specifically how organizations such as the FBI or its other government partners actually address it. So there's a number of ways that governments spread disinformation, sow discord. They use false personas and fabricated stories on social media platforms, in order to discredit either U.S. individuals or institutions or programs. There are a number of different influence activities out there targeting specifically U.S. officials, other U.S. persons, and that is actually pretty traditional intelligence tradecraft by nation states. but it also goes to criminal efforts to suppress either voting, illegal campaigns for campaign finance. It has actually been involved, specifically for us, cyber attacks against voting infrastructure, computer intrusions targeting elected officials or certain campaign officials. It also has evidenced itself with secret funding or influence campaigns, either to harm a person or support a particular cause. Disinformation campaigns, also with the use of social media platforms, have been very, very good in causing some confusion or trying to trick or incite a population. And that goes back to, again, nation states using both older media campaigns that, this has occurred, in our history when we had print media, but now with the use of cyber, now you have bots, controlled by organizations such as the Russian, Internet Research Agency. You've got other nation state organizations that use both social media platforms and organize bots out there to actually sow and run anti and influence campaigns against the United States.
Thank you. And Jim, when we think about the past, how have foreign influences posed risks to our nation's cybersecurity in the past? And maybe there are a couple of prominent examples that you can think of.
Well, yeah, certainly the quickest one that comes to mind is the Russian hacking of the Democratic National Committee prior to the 2016 election. The release of that information via WikiLeaks and other types of disinformation campaigns. It also goes to more of a foreign intelligence threat. For example, China, taking the F-35 Raptor information and copying it into their own, type of attack aircraft, right? The Chinese doing the same thing with different types of military hardware. There's also a great example of I think the Chinese who actually tried to copy aspects of one of our international level types of jets, not from a military aspect, but from a domestic aspect, and ended up seeing plans on the internet with various holes in that type of plan based upon what was, redacted from what was stolen, from the Chinese.
Thank you, Jim. How are foreign influences posing risks in today's world?
So, Jordan, I think the best way to, and the most topical answer to that question is really about the COVID-19 and the global pandemic that's attacked all of us. So you will see after, and this will be in kind of two phases. One, it'll be the disinformation campaigns, but also about the whole work from home idea. So, after the initial outbreak of COVID-19, we saw a tremendous number of disinformation campaigns appear across the internet and online. Internet information manipulation and fabrication about the COVID-19's origin, right? Its scale, the government response, right? The US government's response, other governments' response to the pandemic in their countries. Prevention and treatment was also a big area of disinformation that was created online. And so let me first talk about the whole, disinformation with the origin, right? You saw China and these other authoritarian governments, promoting false claims about the origins of the virus, right? It didn't happen in Wuhan, China. It happened somewhere else. Using common tactics like, censoring news, injecting false narratives into social media platforms, and also in certain cases, producing actual videos that were put out on the internet by these nation states, which created that type of disinformation. Those uploaded on YouTube and other mediums as well. We also saw a lot of disinformation about the scale of the virus, right? Chinese state-backed media continue to promote content saying that China had completely claimed success and had only had, a small number of infections and a small number of deaths, right? And we know now that those narratives were completely false, but they were trying to, create that disinformation. And it also went to, what I think are, the ridiculous, which is, I actually saw and laughed about disinformation campaigns that promoted the thought that 5G, technology actually suppresses your immune system, and spreads the virus, or crazy stuff, like we've heard with treatments about, certainly potentially harmful things, right? Drinking bleach or chlorine oxide, or the use of vitamin C, or other types of drugs can cure the virus. So we saw this complete grouping of nation states trying to utilize disinformation to certainly limit, what Americans thought of the impact on COVID in their states. But then, to my other point early on, this was also about a tremendous shift in, all governments and companies, especially in the US, going to work from home. And so now, you see this explosion of COVID related work from home phishing information, because now you have scared people, and you have employees that are working from home, and their home router now becomes part of a company's infrastructure and part of that network system. And from a cyber aspect, you now have every one of those individuals who are working from home, with their personal routers and their personal cyber hygiene or lack thereof, becoming a part of a company's infrastructure and a part of a company's ecosystem. And so you really saw this change in both the nation state and what I think is a lot of organized crime tactics about how they're attacking organizations and attacking the employees, through their work from home aspects.
And Jim, as a follow-up, how are these risks affecting research institutions and universities?
Well, foreign influence types of actions here have always had an impact on universities over the years. You have a number of different nation states that engage in what I would call foreign talent programs by different governments, and what those foreign talent programs, they are really foreign talent recruitment programs. China, for example, has what they call their 1,000 talents plan. They also have foreign research students who are actually trained intelligence officers who are actually sending phishing emails, breaking into university networks, and actually utilizing their position as a student or a grad student in order to try to infiltrate the colleges and universities. And unfortunately or fortunately, right, our colleges and universities and our research institutes, right, their networks were designed to share information, right? Their whole mantra here is for transparency and to share ideas and to share information, right? And unfortunately, you now have nation states and a lot of organized crime organizations, right, that are trying to take and attack those networks that were designed to share information, not secure information. One of the cases that I worked in the FBI was a Midwest manufacturing case where I've got a company who loves to use social media, Facebook, Instagram, all types of social media to promote what they're doing. And they had a certain type of intellectual property that they used to manufacture what they did. And they used to go out and advertise, hey, we're going to the local universities in order to recruit the best and the brightest. And so they put that out over social media. And guess what? They did this on one time, and they got 3 amazing candidates who were applied for this particular position, which was in their networking, and also had to do with their ecosystem and their attack surface. And lo and behold, they hire one individual, and that individual is just amazing, right? Complete rock star. has ideas and takes them and helps them to think about it in ways they hadn't thought of before, right? So what does this organization do, right? They give them privileged access to and larger amounts of access to their databases and their infrastructure and their entire ecosystem. And, unfortunately, 18 months later, this individual exfiltrates all of that intellectual property out to the Chinese government, right? So, this is a classic case, right, of a foreign intelligence officer who's now posing as a graduate student, utilizing that university type of atmosphere to insert himself into a private company. And it presents itself as an insider threat case, but this is really economic espionage. And so this is a perfect example of how we really need to both protect the information that our universities and research institutes have, but also the impact on that to private companies.
Thank you. And Jim, what steps can academia in the United States take today to better position themselves against the growing number of foreign threats?
Well, certainly having a robust relationship with their local FBI office, I think, is critical. You have there are 56 field offices around the United States and almost 400 resident agencies that support those field offices. And so there's either a field office or a resident agency, within every type of university or research institute out there. And so having that public-private partnership, sharing information, with that FBI group, because becoming part of groups, like ISACs, Information Assurance Alliance councils, becoming part of InfraGard, which is an organization run by the FBI, which promotes those public-private partnerships. But it's also, more internally, making sure that you have you're doing the basics, right? Proper access management, right? Non-US researchers, should be prohibited from national defense projects, proper security boundaries, understanding what your sensitive data is. Research institutes and universities, right, are businesses, right? They should think of it the same way that I talk about with boards or C-suites, right? If you have to boil this down to three things, right, it's all about data, ecosystems, and attack surface. And I know that these organizations are designed to share information, but they also want to protect, right, that information. And so if they have foreign students, right, being part of that foreign talent program, if there are federal sponsors or individual US government organizations that are part of that research, most researchers also should reach out to their Office of Research Integrity and Protections. Most have one. I've dealt with them before when I was working in a number of field offices, protecting that research portfolio, understanding what the keys to the kingdom are. What is that specific type of data that you need to protect, and then allowing proper access to that. But also looking at the source of funding that the university projects have, right? Is it US government funded? Because there are specific individual types of actions and protections you need to take. For example, is this National Institute of Health? Is this National Science Foundation? Is this funding coming from the US Department of Defense or any of those other research entities? If they're involved, there's a completely new set of procedures and policies that they really need to look at.
Thank you, Jim. And so far, we have discussed how foreign risks have influenced our state of cybersecurity in the past, and we've discussed how they continue to do so today. And so now we will discuss how we anticipate them to do so in the future. And so, Jim, my first question is, how will the foreign risks that we discussed today continue to evolve? And what can our nation expect to see in the future?
Well, right, that is the question. The answer to that everybody wants to know. Certainly in my eyes, based on my years of experience, Uh, you know, I see, and I've worked cyber since the 2002, 2003 era. So I've seen cyber evolve. I've seen the threats evolve. I've seen the platforms evolve. And one of the areas that I think is critical to the answer of this question is really where social media companies come in, because they have made all the difference, right? So it's a great thing, by allowing groups of like-minded people to find and talk to each other, right? There's this new sense of connectedness, within the world based upon social media platforms, right? But it's also given these organizations and these nation states, and it's given the propagandists the ability to find audiences who are receptive to their messages. And I think social media companies, we've seen a lot of congressional testimony in the last couple of years, and I think we're going to see more. And they've started to do a good job, but I think they need to do a better job in detecting and deleting accounts belonging right to the propagandists, right, as well as the bots that run those groups by those nation states that are, basically the undercurrent of the propagandists. I see a lot of increase in what I would consider troll farms, right? These are bots, or these are troll farms out there that are exhibiting and talking about a particular type of behavior, and they're using these platforms to promote that. So whether it's campaign election influence, or it's COVID-19 influence, or in certain situations, I've also seen cases where we're talking about medical types of influence. Look at the vaccine. There's all types of information out there concerning the efficacy of the vaccines. And when organizations, when people are out there talking and having a legitimate conversation about their fears on whether or not they should vaccinate because of the pandemic or not, I'm also seeing different types of organizations and nation states evolving, talking about negatively influencing the conversation about to vaccinate or not vaccinate. So what you're seeing is, and I think, in the future, you're going to continue to see the use of social media platforms. You're going to see this collection of across platforms, right? It's not just going to be different social media, but it's also going to be video. It's going to be, different types of, the FBI and CISA sent out um, uh, a recent privacy industry notification, talking about deep fakes and talking about the use of video. So you're going to see this expansion of the platforms used by these nation states and by these organizations that are trying to utilize foreign influence for both a positive and a negative viewpoint, right? The Chinese use it in both aspects, right? The Chinese use these platforms in order to try to promote a positive image of what it's like to be in China and work in China and live in China, as opposed to also utilizing those platforms to provide negative aspects to, U.S., Western civilization and cultures and things like that. And it's going to be really important for these social media platforms and these newer evolving different types of what I will call internet connectivity groups, right, that are providing these and designing these platforms. There is a social aspect to this where they have to be responsible for the types of information they're allowed out there. You also have a law enforcement aspect of this, right, where you've got the National Security Agency, U.S. Cyber Command working with the FBI and social media companies, right, to take down Russian propaganda accounts. And also, I believe there's also a legislative aspect to this as well, but there absolutely has to be both a all of government and a public-private sector piece. But I think there's a technology aspect to this as well, and that's the use of artificial intelligence, AI, and machine learning in order to utilize tools, right, to go with and add a technology piece to the people and the process piece. We in cyber and technology, we talk a lot about utilizing those three areas, right? People, process, and technology. And I think there's a technology aspect to this as well. Recent advances in artificial intelligence techniques like natural language processing, I think are really allowing better use of that technology to take care of different types of deep fakes and audio visual material that's out there. And I also would like for us to see different uses of advanced AI and machine learning, because it can be used for both, right? It can be used both for the assistance of understanding what types of information and fact checking are out there, but also can be used to help our organizations and our companies do a better job of protecting themselves.
Thank you. And Jim, my last question is, how can we take our lessons learned on how to mitigate and handle foreign risks and take that to better position ourselves for the future?
Well, I think it's really important. This is both a cultural question, right? Because you got organizations and nation states that are engaging in influence campaigns because of the differences in their culture versus our culture, right? East culture versus West. I think this is an all of government and a public-private partnership responsibility. It's not companies, especially on the private sector. And I've been enlightened to see in the last year or so, companies stepping up and talking more about utilizing their company as a platform to talk about social issues and to talk about environmental issues, and to actually take a stab at not only protecting the value of their company for their shareholders, but they're also trying to protect the value of their company, right, for what that means to U.S. society and U.S. culture. And from a law enforcement standpoint and from a government standpoint, I've seen a vast increase in the types of activities and the use of both social media and different platforms that I know the FBI has used, such as something called their Protected Voices Initiative, right? And this is providing tools and resources to political campaigns and companies and individuals to help protect themselves, right, against online foreign influence operations and cybersecurity threats. And so you've now got the FBI and certainly CISA, Department of Homeland Security, and other organizations that I see are starting to work with higher education. They're starting to work with companies to provide this kind of all of government, all of people approach to how we're talking about this. And I think that's really important for the future. If we're going to protect ourselves and we're going to position ourselves to fight these threats, because guess what? The nation states, organized crime, all these threat actors, right? They're using artificial intelligence. They're using machine learning. They're using 5G, right? They're using all these technologies from and platforms from a negative attack surface type of viewpoint. We need to be able to position ourselves to not only utilize those platforms to increase the value of our companies and to increase the American culture, but also to help defend ourselves as well.
Thank you. And Jim, thank you for your time this afternoon, and to everyone attending this virtual conference. We appreciate your time and attention to this presentation. We do hope that we can meet in person for the 2022 annual seminar. And thank you again, Dr. Gamache and the Texas A&M University system for having us. Take care and stay well.
Thank you.